So as you may know, one of the big things that came about as part of the Call of the Tempestarii update is Void Storms. They are of course the brand new way that you can crack relics in Railjack missions. So let's get into some of the pros and cons when it comes to this new game mode. Now ultimately, they're quite a lot of fun, but they're still not exactly Railjack missions. There are some things that I like, and there are some things that I still feel like are not in the right direction for a Railjack mission. For starters, when it comes to the things that I like about Void Storms, I tend to find that because normal missions are more boring, the Railjack versions are much more exciting. What's also great about Void Storms is that where normal relic missions are in fact low level missions, the Void Storms are in fact somewhat high level missions. That is of course going to be really good. For example, we have normal mode Lith missions where enemies are basically level 10, whereas Earth Proxima Lith missions have enemies at level 30. So that is of course going to be very exciting. On a similar basis, we have normal mode Axie missions that usually are around the level 45-50 mark, whereas Veil Proxima Grenier Axie missions, they are of course level 80 enemies, so that is going to be very good as well. But what seems to be the problem is that Corpus missions have lower level Corpus enemies. So I feel like if DE can actually raise the level of Corpus enemies, i.e. the ground troops, from level 50 in the Veil Proxima all the way up to the level 80 equivalent, i.e. just like how the Grenier missions are, I think that will be really good. They'll just make things more interesting. Yes, it'll make things more difficult, but you know what? I feel like this kind of level of difficulty is necessary for this mission. There's also often a lot of things happening at the same time when it comes to Void Storms. That basically means that you have to really be on your toes in order to actually complete these missions. Now, that does mean that solo play is a bit of a dumpster fire in the sense that there are maybe 50 other things happening at the same time, but if you ask me, that's a good thing because it really brings back the good old-fashioned days of Railjack when it first came out. I really enjoyed when Railjack was just throwing 50,000 different things at you at the same time, because that basically meant you had to be really on top of everything in order to be able to figure it out. So I reckon that's actually a good thing, not a bad thing. What's also great about Void Storms obviously is that it marries together Railjack with other parts of the game. This has been one of the chief complaints and frankly one of the few valid reasons why Railjack was not in a good place in the previous era, i.e. the content island issue. This has been getting more resolved with Corpus Railjack, but honestly I feel like this is getting much more resolution through Void Storms than Corpus Railjack as a whole. So I feel like Void Storms are just simply a much better solution to this problem. And don't forget that you can get Sevagoth through these missions. So obviously there is a pro at the start of this particular update, i.e. everyone wants to get Sevagoth, so you can get Sevagoth through these missions, but later on this may be considered a quote-unquote problem because Sevagoth's parts will effectively dilute the drop tables, but let's be real here, that's not really a problem worth considering. For the purpose of pure Sevagoth farming though, I do find that Corpus Exterminate missions are probably the fastest in the sense that you don't really end up doing those extra parts of the mission if you don't really feel the need to. You can actually just go whole ham and actually complete the normal part of the mission and therefore have a chance of getting that Sevagoth part. Now, when it comes to doing these Void Storm missions, I find that using the Tactical Avionic Form-Up is in fact very useful. So if you are finding that for whatever reason these are taking a little bit too long to complete, I would probably recommend bringing that Tactical Avionic, especially if you're in a team, mainly because it's probably a team that's just holding you up. There's usually one guy somewhere who's just taking forever to get to the end of the mission at the end of the normal part of the mission, so at that point you might as well try and not remove as much time as possible by using something like Form Up as well. Now, ultimately, I guess there's only one real thing that is keeping Void Storms and frankly Corpus Railjack as a whole from being a perfect game mode, and that is that once again the Railjack plays a very small role in these missions for the most part. Now, what do I mean by that? Enemy fighters cannot be corrupted, which further reduces the role of the Railjack, and such is the nature of Corpus Railjack missions as a whole as well. Generally speaking, destroying fighters doesn't really yield any results outside of maybe getting those drops that those fighters give you. Instead, right now, especially when it comes to cracking relics, the Railjack plays barely a roll. Essentially, you're going to have to actually board enemy cruise ships if you want to actually get some relics to crack, i.e. if you need that reactant, you don't want to destroy the cruise ship, you actually want to board the damn thing, especially in Grenier missions. That is pretty much the way to go. I find that doing the objective is a pretty slow way of getting reactant, simply because for some reason, I don't know, for some reason reactant doesn't really show up that much inside the objective. But if you're doing a Corpus mission, you can get a lot of reactant anyway by doing the objective, especially when you do the final objective, i.e. the normal part of the mission itself. At that point, that's a completely separate thing. But ultimately, the big question for me, which is really the big question with the future of Railjack, is these are after all Railjack missions, so why is the Railjack still doing diddly squat? That is of course the big question if you ask me. But that's pretty much it. Void Storms are still quite enjoyable missions nevertheless, and they're probably going to be my preferred way to crack relics. Even if on a Railjack relic number basis, they're probably slower than cracking relics in normal sense. At least I'm not falling asleep, so that is of course going to be really, really good. Otherwise, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. How do you feel about relic farming with Railjack? Let me know in the comments. Are there other things that you like about Void Storms? Are there things that you don't like about Void Storms? Let me know in the comments. Keep in mind, if you keep your Railjack inside the Void Storm, there's a good to fair chance that you're going to get damaged as well. Those Void Storms do end up doing quite a, not terribly significant, but still pretty sizable chunk of your Railjack's health. But because Railjacks can be built to be extremely tanky these days, generally speaking, the damage that comes from Void Storms is a little bit negligible for the time being, so we'll just have to see what happens after that. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you liked this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Railjack action, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye!